Now, I like salt more than the average person, I'm here to tell you, but should we be adding Epsom salts to our garden? Is it fact or fiction? Let's crack that nut right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast. All right, everybody, before we get started, please, we are a patron-run podcast, so if you'd like to support us and keep the show going, please join us on Patreon. We right now are about to hit a milestone. We get a couple more, then we will do put all the patrons' names into a drawing, and Batavia has announced that it will be a Crown Royal bag, to be specific, and we will pick a name out, and they will be on a one-on-one Zoom call with us. So come join us and get those 2 free episodes a month and all the other good stuff, and check us out on YouTube. So, Epsom salts.
I was pulling up, and I just said, I'm just going straight to the Farmer's Almanac, because I assumed that they would dispel this.
All right,
go ahead.
I have another website that I use too, so, and I have to be honest when it comes time, but I've often heard multiple things about this, and I was interviewing somebody for a project that we're working on, and I said, do you use Epsom salts in your garden? She goes, hell no. And she's a professional. And I was like, why not? She's like, why would I put a professional gardener by the state of the horticultural department of the Extension Service of North Carolina? And she's like, why the hell would I add salt to my garden? And I was like, okay. And so that led me down the path to look at Epsom salts more in depth than I had ever done, because I use it for my body. It's great if I'm hurt.
I got to use some now.
But, a lot of people, if you watch social media, they swear by, and I know that I'm going to get crucified for what I'm going to say on this podcast today. And go ahead, light me up in the comments. Go for it, because there's nothing you can do to change my mind. But I appreciate everybody for what they do in their garden, and it's your garden. You do what you want. That being said, let's talk about those Epsom salts, because what did your website say? What does the Farmer's Almanac say? Let's just start there.
I'm going to give you a spoiler. I'm greatly disappointed that the Farmer's Almanac says adding Epsom salt to your soil before planting vegetables gives it a boost of magnesium. It also says test soil for deficiencies first. You can also sprinkle Epsom salt around your plants for healthier foliage. Add 1 tablespoon per 12 inches of height. Like, they had a whole routine here. I'm shocked.
Well, let's stop there and break that down. I like where they're going. So
I don't know. There is a separate article that I'll skim over as you dig into liking this. It's from March 2020.
Well, the reason why I like it is because they gave us our topic point. So let's talk about magnesium. How much magnesium do you need in your garden?
I don't know. I just basically feed the plants until they say no more.
Now, we all know that's not true. So they don't need a lot of magnesium. Okay. What magnesium is required by the plant can come from the soil with no issue, because you don't really get a magnesium. If a gardening company is not making a magnesium additive like on the regular, then that should be a trigger for you. You know what I mean? And so that's a really important thing to realize is it'll add magnesium and I believe sulfur. And they are essential elements, but they don't need to be constantly fed to it. So they aid in photosynthesis and they help absorb the 3 macronutrients. But there's another thing that's underlying. And then they said in the same breath, test your soil. And here's my issue. If you're adding Epsom salts, you're probably masking a bigger problem inside of your garden. And one day,
come on, somebody.
One day it will catch up to you. Okay?
So, last episode, there were no stories. The other episode, first episode of the series, there were stories. So I think I'm about even. I think the number of stories I told in episode 1 could cover both episode 1 and 2. So now I'm starting from ground zero. And I can fold in stories, and so I will. And the note here is additives. Like, you know how I feel about additional steps. I had someone comment recently that I had to go back to look what the reference was, and someone's always going to give me advice on how to manage, worms and caterpillars and things on my greens. And I'm like, I tell y'all every time, this is what I'm going to do. I don't want to do anything else, right? And so I'm hard-headed about it. And so the gardener came back and said, oh, did you try the something water pepper spray? And I was, because I want to be polite, because they were polite in their, offer of this solution that I didn't ask for, but that's okay. So I said, no, I haven't, I didn't give it a try. And I'm like, I don't like additional steps if I could help it. And so we've talked about on this show how this is the most damage, which is small in comparison. This is the most damage that I've seen to my leafy greens when I've made some attempt to try to manage it, right? It's just based on the new netting.
Right.
And so you add this spray as a part of your routine, and you lose track of, you add this Epsom salt, you lose track of what's needed versus now what's just a part of your routine. So now every year or every time you're planting, you're adding this thing, and do you need it? Did you really get your soil tested like the Farmer's Almanac recommended? A lot of people won't. Right, it just becomes this ritual.
It's a large number that won't too.
Yeah, it might as well have been in fine print. It was in parentheses.
Yeah.
And so I mean, go back to the old days in the OG episodes. I'm going to be a lazy gardener about something. I have to be. Well, there has to be something that I don't do. You can't do it all.
Well, and I mean, if you're having an issue, and your first reaction is to go find a garden hack and try and fix your issue with that, excuse the language, but you're fucking up. Like, straight up.
Do you feel like people in the videos you see online, and do you feel like people are remedying a thing, or do you feel like this is like, oh, did you add Epsom salt to your tomato plants? Like, I feel like people are coming out of the gate and saying they're doing this.
Damn, I love it when you transition me and I don't give you any tips to do it. So, okay, let's do that. Let's talk about tomatoes. People add Epsom salts to tomatoes.
I feel like I'm getting fired up. I feel like I need to calm down.
You do need to calm down. Someone talk for a second. So, people use Epsom salts to combat blossom end rot on tomatoes. Okay, the magnesium and the sulfur help with that, and that is not a secret. It definitely will help. But let's talk about why you're getting the blossom end rot and why it's actually helping it. So I told you earlier that it helps absorb the 3 nutrients, correct? I told you that. So it's more than likely it's a calcium deficiency, or it's a pH imbalance. It's either, I can't remember, it's too acidic or too base. I think it's too acidic is the one. But if you have low calcium inside of your garden, then it doesn't allow the nutrients to get up, and it affects the water absorption of your plants. So by adding this, you may be fixing it for this small period of time, but in the future, moving forward, you're still going to have this situation, so you're constantly going to be adding that. So then the question becomes, well, how do I treat this? And it's you do the test. You figure out, I got it really bad when every single watermelon that came up got it. I went and I got a calcium foliar spray, and I sprayed the leaves, worked like a champ. I stopped spraying it, they all died. So I was like, well, let me get it. I found out I was low in calcium and my pH was off. So as I talked to my extension service and I got my test, and then I took it a step further and made a phone call, because I was like, I didn't send an email. I didn't hit him up on social media. I picked up and I dialed the digits and I got him on the horn. And I was like, hey man, first things first, I don't know what I'm looking at, and I'm tired of reading tutorials. And what is this and this cause? And then he broke it down for me. And he told me, he was like, and this guy's job was only to answer questions. And he was like, the calcium deficiency is causing the water not to come up, which is causing the nutrients not to go up to the plant. So as you do these things and you're trying to combat it, you're actually making it worse, because you're not fixing it. And year after year, it's getting depleted more and more. And so that's the magnesium and sulfur working in it. So you need to add the calcium back into it. And there's all kinds of different, I use I use a crab shell mixture in my garden every other year to help with that. So as it breaks down, the calcium from the shell adds to the garden. Get your pH tested, and don't do a home pH test. Those things are dog dookie. Go get most states will do it for free, but you're just masking a problem. And that's if you're just adding it as a preventative, whatever, but it's not really needed.
Okay.
Are you fired up still, or are you good?
No, I'm ready.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Go.
So, one of the things to note, though, so when I think about getting a soil test, I think about, putting some of the soil from one of my raised beds into a baggie. I do see this as a method often with containers, because we know there is inherently challenges when it comes to planting in containers. I'm a huge fan of it. However, it's not the same as planting in soil and in the ground, period. Right. And so I wonder, am I dumping my potting mix into something and then having that sent for, a sample? It's interesting because it feels like we're constantly amending things that are in containers. So
I can tell you that I would not do that. I would just replace the soil, because the way you do a soil sample is you get a randomized test. So you're going into your garden bed and you're getting it from like 10 to 20 different places at a certain depth. So, and it's a contained area. Now, if you go and you do it in a container, you're essentially going to have to do, if you have 20 containers, you're going to have to do 20 separate soil tests. And here's the key. You got to keep track of each one of those soil tests yourself. Let me tell you, because I screwed that up and had to go do a whole nother one because I didn't know which was which. So based on that, my recommendation is, and the benefit of the container is you can just take out half the soil and add half in. You don't have to replace all of it all the time.
Yeah, it's like macaroni and cheese. Like everyone, I've never had two people make macaroni and cheese and it tastes the same.
Yeah.
Right. So what you mix up to put into unless everyone's just using the same bagged soil, once you mix up something for your containers, it's going to be slightly different. And a lot of it is for a lot of us, just by eye, right? I'm going to add this, I'm going to add that. And so I can't express enough. Make sure you really have a problem, right? Make sure you know what the problem is pointing to.
Yeah.
And before you start kind of with these Pinterest and IG solutions, we're so quick to want to do something. And in some cases, it's not a thing that you need to do. In some cases, things will correct themselves. Blossom End Rot is a different situation, but man, let's stop starting something that you're ultimately not going to want to continue.
So I'm going to say two things here. One, a lot of times the easiest solution is not the correct solution. Okay. So it's easy to go get a bag of Epsom salt, take a bath, then put that dirty ass, I'm just joking about that, but put some Epsom salt in your garden. And then the other thing I want to talk about is a lot of people use it to aid in seed germination.
Oh, I've not heard this one.
Yeah, so they use it to add to seed starting mixes and stuff like that. And I want to say, I want to be very blunt about that and say, how dare you spit in the face of God and think that you need to help a seed grow by adding a nutrient to it? Because we take it for granted, but a seed is absolutely perfect. It's a small, basically a small capsule that holds enough nutrients and water inside of that seed in order to get that first root to start. Okay, that's magic, if you ask me. And to get it to come up out of the ground, then you start adding to it. But if you start pumping it full of chemicals right away, and salt's not a chemical, but an additive, then you're not really giving it a chance. I do all of my seed starting in peat moss and perlite, and maybe a little bit of compost. I'm even experimenting with not using compost now. And for the first month, I had nothing and they grow fine. So think about that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessary to get a seed to germinate.
So I am, for those that may be able to see me, I am emailing or messaging you now to add this link to Patreon.
Okay.
To Patreon about is Epsom salt good or bad? And the highlights, again, Farmer's Almanac. Look, I'm all for it when I agree with what they're saying. The bottom line is what they're saying is don't do it if you feel like you have some deficiency. Get your stuff tested, which we said at the opening. And it also says that, a bunch of plants can grow even if there is some deficiency in magnesium or sulfur. There's some things like roses and tomatoes and peppers, and I'm sure melons are one of them, that could suffer. But what happens when you add a thing and you already have enough of it? You can walk yourself into some other problems.
Yeah.
The seed starting, I'm going to continue to beat the drum up, try the simple way. And if the simple way isn't adding these things, if the simple way doesn't work and you try it again and it doesn't work, and you try it again and it doesn't work. All right, it's like process of elimination in the reverse. All right, let's try to add one more thing to this mixture and see how that does, right? I'm on the freaking is it the third year or the fourth year? The third year of like rolling the dice with starting brassicas by seed. But there are small tweaks that I'm making, and I'm not adding salt.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I've been starting seeds now for, I'm going to call it 12 years just to be safe. And I've never used this Epsom salt, let's be clear, in that, or in the years that in my grandfather's garden, my granny's garden, and my mom's garden, nobody's ever put Epsom salt in anything, and they've all had bumper crops. Hell, one of them supported their entire family off of that, and another one gave 95% of the food to a homeless shelter and fed them off of it with no Epsom salt. All he used was fertilizer and water, I mean, enough said, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's important to use. I don't think it's required. I don't even think of it as an option, personally. Where do you stand?
My uneducated, and I mean that literally, my uneducated response here is fiction. Am I too early? Fiction.
No.
It's
perfect.
It's a no for me.
Yeah. N-O. Don't use it. But, seriously, after we've badmouthed it this whole time, if you want to use it in your garden, go for it. But just, Batavia and I, and even Leonard, believe it or not, we all truly care about your gardens, and we want you to have the most, bountiful harvest you can. And that being said, we don't want you to mask a problem that you could already have. So just be very careful when you do these kinds of things, and start with a soil test, because you don't want salts to build up inside of your garden. And it can happen even though it is water soluble. Like if you do it wrong or you don't know what you're doing, then it could be an issue, because a lot of these hack sites that you see, they don't care about your garden at all. They're going to tell you whatever they want. And they're just, you don't even know you honestly don't even know if they've even used Epsom salt in that plant. You know what I mean? I have plants out there growing next to each other. One's yellow, one's green. Why is that? I don't know. But there's no Epsom salts. You know what I'm saying? I could do a whole video series about that. But so just be careful, everybody. We want your gardens to be good. If
you're a long time user of this, look, I'm not trying to, step on your toes.
Nope,
if this
not
is
at
what
all.
you're doing and you're comfortable with it, rock on.
Yeah.
A part of the pleasure of doing this show is we get a chance to share what we are doing or not, or what we believe or not. So here we are.
Well, and to be fair, 15 minutes ago, the hardcore user is either clicked off or is now cussing us out. So, and that's cool. There's people that are really passionate about this kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
All right, everybody. Be safe, be cool, stay cool, and grow some food, and use Epsom salts in the bath.
See ya.
See ya.